Hi, I'm bobbaulch with the That's Jesus channel. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Jesus in Genesis. We're finally here. Here is the chapter where things really get moving in finding Jesus in Genesis. I love this. We are at Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through 9. It's the call of Abram. We're going to be talking about in this video him getting to Shechem and all of the things that Shechem has in store for us in Scripture. Specifically, what we're going to get to eventually is what happens thousands of years later at this very place in Scripture where Abram finds himself. Jesus will find himself in the same place, just a stone's throw from this tree. He will encounter a woman, and he will proclaim himself to be the Messiah. We'll get there in this video. If you haven't read this chapter yet, you don't have to read the whole thing. Just read Genesis chapter 12, the first 9 verses. We'll wait here until you get back. Welcome back. So if you want a memory verse, it's going to be this one. It is Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house. Go to the land which I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed." So the beginning of Genesis 12 records a prophecy from the Lord himself concerning Abram. Now, whether this is the first time he heard this prophecy or whether it's a repetition of another conversation between God and Abram, maybe the one that Stephen spoke about in Acts 7, we just don't know for sure. What we do know is that this promise is multifaceted, and it serves as the catalyst for the rest of the Bible, the entire Bible. So let's take a closer look. Abram is told to leave his land. Some translations, like the NASB, will say Abram is told to leave his country. Now, that's not exactly accurate. The Hebrew word that's used here is used a total of 309 times just in the book of Genesis in 250 verses. In the NASB, it's translated as country only 3 times. All the other times, it's translated as land or ground or earth. It simply means an area or locality. So Abram is told that he is going to leave the area where he was from, and he's going to go to a new land. And he's also told to leave his relatives. Now, he doesn't have to leave all of his family. Some of them actually come with him, but for the most part, all of his kindred and his bloodline will be left as he turns his face to another land and leaves them. Finally, Abram is told to leave his father's house. Now, the word that's used here is quite literally father. He's not told to leave just the people he's barely related to. He is not just leaving his clan. He's not just leaving his close relatives. No, Abram is told to leave his very own father. And he's going to make this home where he's going to, and it's where he's going to inherit this land. But first, he has to leave his father. He has to leave this land that he's grown up in. Why? Because he has a mission to fulfill. Okay? Even if it means leaving everything and everyone behind, he's got to fulfill this mission. Abram is then given a promise, and we're going to look at this promise more and deeply in future videos, but we can do that because God repeats this promise several times to Abram and to his descendants. Initially, it's given here in verses 2 and 3, and then a portion of it is repeated in verse 7, and then in Genesis 13, and Genesis 15, and Genesis 22. Abram gets more details about this promise and his seed. It's even given to his son and his grandson in Genesis 26 and 28 and 46. We will have plenty of opportunities to dig deep at a later point, but right now, let's just look at the basics of this promise that's offered in verses 2 and 3. First, Abram will be made into a great nation. and God will bless Abram. God will make Abram a great name, and Abram will be a blessing, and God will bless those who bless Abram and curse those who curse him. So all the peoples on earth would be blessed through Abram. So note the repetition of the word bless in each of those promises. Abram will be blessed. He will be a blessing, and through him, everyone else will be blessed. So Abram is 75 years old. He leaves Haran with his wife and his nephew and all of their belongings, to include servants and slaves, for the land of Canaan. And we have very few details of this journey, but it does mention that Canaanites are still in the area at that time, and that Abram arrived in the land of Shechem, and the Lord appears to Abram. Now stop right there. The Lord appears to Abram. The text doesn't say that the Lord spoke to Abram there. It says that God actually presented himself to Abram in a form that could be seen. Now that's significant because Scripture says that no one has seen the Father. So this is most probably not only a theophany where we see God on earth, it is probably a Christophany where Jesus is seen. So that's amazing. And Abram is then given another promise to add to the ones that he's already received. Quote, to your descendants I will give this land. So Abram built an altar there, and then he continued on his journey. But let's just stop right here at the land of Shechem. We have quite a bit of information about this land of Shechem. After Jacob, that's Abram's grandson, left his father-in-law, he came to Shechem and bought land for 100 pieces of silver. And it was on that newly purchased land that Jacob built an altar and dug. That's according to John 4:12. He dug a well. All right, that's all going to be in Genesis 33. And it was in Shechem that Jacob's daughter, Dinah, was raped, and where her brothers massacred the Canaanites in that area who were responsible. That's in Genesis 34. It is probably at the base of this very tree that Jacob would eventually bury the household gods, or the teraphim that his wife Rachel stole from her father. That's in Genesis 35. And apparently Shechem is where Jacob's 10 oldest sons tended their sheep and sold Joseph into slavery. That's Genesis 37. It is the ground that Jacob would eventually give to Joseph, his favorite son. That's in Genesis 48. And it is where the bones of Joseph were buried after the Israelites escaped Egypt. That's in Joshua 24. In a pronouncement made by Joshua, Shechem is given as a city of refuge for killers. That's Joshua 21. It's also the place where Joshua renewed the Israelites' devotion to God by declaring, quote, this is one of my favorite verses, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's Joshua 24. Shechem is also an important site in the reign of kings, King Abimelech, King Rehoboam, and King Jeroboam. I mean, it's a very important site. But the most important thing is this. It's the fact that in the New Testament, the name of Shechem is Sychar. And it is here, by the well that Jacob dug, that a holy man had a discussion with a scandalous Samaritan woman about a future Messiah who, according to Isaiah, would establish a kingdom and be its eternal king. And it's here at Shechem, at the well of Jacob, perhaps within a stone's throw of the tree where Abram built an altar, that this holy man declared himself to be the Messiah. Now, who is this holy man that the Samaritan woman spoke to? He is the man who left his home in heaven to come to earth. He's the man who left his royal bloodline to live as a poor carpenter. He is the man who left his perfect father, full of glory, to be born into an imperfect family full of scandal. His disciples will be made into a great spiritual nation. His name is greater than all names. God will bless those who bless him. God will curse those who curse him. His followers will not only eventually possess that land, they will possess the world. Now, who is this Messiah? He is truly the only one who will be a blessed and be a blessing. And through him, everyone else will be blessed. He's the only one that can do all of that. And what's his name? Well, you probably already know his name, don't you? That's Jesus. Thanks for tuning in. This is a great lesson. We're getting into the meat of Genesis, where for the rest of the book, it's just full of Jesus. I thank you for tuning in. And if you don't mind, would you leave a comment, subscribe, and like the video? Go on and ring that bell so you'll be notified of future videos. My name is Bob Balch with the That's Jesus channel. Be blessed.